Well, have you had enough yet? My mailbox has been full. I don't know about you, but welcome to the last edition of Only in Illinois before Election Day on Tuesday, November 8th, 2016. I'm Madeline Dubeck, and this is Matt Dietrich. And so we want to wrap up for everybody our thoughts about the big statewide questions on the ballot come Election Day, or now if you're already early voting. So since we last talked, Matt, there was quite a significant development in the Senate race as Mark Kirk, the incumbent Republican, and Tammy Duckworth,
right,
U.S. Representative and the Democrat, had a debate in central Illinois, not too far from where you live.
That's right. It was down in Springfield, and I think by now probably everybody's seen it, but just to refresh your memory, here is one episode from that debate that made national news in no time. Here's a quick look.
And let's hold our allies accountable, because we can't do it all.
Senator Kirk, 30 seconds to rebut.
I had forgotten that your parents came all the way from Thailand to serve George Washington.
Move on to the next question. This is Bernie.
That remark was heard around the world. It's been played over and over again. It's been in editorial cartoons. Mark Kirk apologized for it the next day,
yes, in a tweet.
But it's just too late. And that was, if you were watching the debate, especially if you were there in the room, the awkward silence that followed that comment was just like nothing you've ever experienced before. And I had already thought that Mark Kirk coming into this race was at a disadvantage. This is even before we knew that Tammy Duckworth was going to be his opponent. No matter who his opponent was, Mark Kirk was going to have a struggle in this campaign because he won in 2010 by about 1.5 points over Alexi Janulius.
Right.
2010 was not a presidential year. That is an advantage for Republicans running statewide in Illinois. During presidential years, there's always a significant boost to the Democrats running statewide because turnout is higher. That means a lot more Democrats get to the polls. With Hillary Clinton at the top of the Democratic ticket this year, that's even more significant. We had record...
Because she's from Illinois.
She's from Illinois, and she's the first woman.
And she's the first woman, and she's...
Possibly also because she's running against Donald Trump, you're going to have Democrats and I'm guessing some Republicans who are more motivated because they don't like Donald Trump. There's the other factor here is that in the March primary, we had 47% voter turnout. That was a record. The nearest closest to that since 1960 was 44%. And in that year, which was, I believe, 1992, we had ended up having a 78% total turnout in the general election. So we're looking, it's pretty logical to assume that we're going to have somewhere around 80% turnout. And as we say often, you need to vote. Don't listen to the polls.
Or
Get
Matt.
out and vote. Right.
All right. So then we have the race for comptroller with Republican incumbent. She's not run for election, but she holds the office. Leslie Munger against Democrat Susana Mendoza, who is the Chicago City Clerk. And this has really become the closest thing to a vote for Bruce Rauner or Mike Madigan that you can probably cast.
That's because, and that's because the budget impasse that's going on right now is allowed to happen largely because state employees are still getting their paychecks, even though the Constitution clearly says you're not supposed to spend any state money unless the General Assembly authorizes it in the budget and the governor signs it. Now, Governor Rauner has had an ally in Leslie Munger in keeping the paychecks going because she's the one who writes the state paychecks. And she went to court in the summer of 2015 and argued successfully that the state needed to continue paying all of its employees because otherwise it was going to be in violation of some federal labor laws. That's where things stand now. And that's why Governor Rauner can take such a hard stance and say, I'm not going to talk about the budget until the Democrats make some moves on my reforms. I guarantee you that if state employees could not be paid, and if you had workers working at our universities, at the Department of Transportation, your driver's license facilities, all these other places not getting paid, and there would be so much pressure brought to bear on the governor and on Mike Madigan that you'd have a budget. You'd have a budget. Now, that would be bad news. I think that would be worse news for Rauner because he really wants to make the point that we need to change the way we do business. The status quo is no good. We need some reforms. I don't think if Susana Mendoza is elected as comptroller, she's going to be compliant with Governor Rauner. In fact, that's been her whole campaign. And this is where you get into the proxy war with these two. Leslie Munger has been very open, saying that Susana Mendoza says that Mike Madigan is her mentor. She served for 10 years under Madigan in the House. If you elect Susana Mendoza, you are in effect giving Mike Madigan control of the comptroller's office. On the reverse, Susana Mendoza is very critical of Governor Bruce Rauner and says that Rauner is not doing his job, that he needs to somehow get a budget in place, and that Leslie Munger is doing Rauner's bidding. We don't statewide get to vote for Mike Madigan, only people in his district do.
Right.
He's elected speaker by the Democrats in the House. And we don't get to vote for Bruce Rauner this year because he's not on the ballot for 2 more years. However, I think in this case, that's how your vote is going to end up counting.
So you think that Susana Mendoza, if she were to win, would make it so that state employees wouldn't get paid?
I don't know. I don't know that.
Yeah.
And that has not come up yet. But it took extraordinary means by the comptroller's office back in 2015 to make sure that those paychecks kept going.
People were getting paid.
And I'm not sure that Susana Mendoza would be so willing to facilitate this and keep the pressure off. Now, I think this would be a bad thing for both Madigan and Rauner.
Yes.
It would really,
and Susana Mendoza.
well, and you'd see those two push together.
All right. And so the last thing that we all will be seeing on our ballots is an amendment to the state constitution, a proposal to amend the state constitution to create a so-called lockbox so that any gas taxes, license plate renewal fees, et cetera, all go into a fund that can only be used for transportation purposes.
Right. And
This is called the Safe Roads Amendment.
And the construction industry and lots of other business groups are really behind this because they say that the legislature has just been raiding the roads fund, hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. They've diverted because their budget is so far out of balance, and they've been using that money to deal with other emergencies, and it's left our roads and bridges in really bad shape. They want this amendment because it will stop that from ever happening again. They'll put it in the Constitution, and once you make a constitutional amendment, it's there pretty much forever.
Pretty hard to change it.
Yes.
We have not changed our state constitution since 1970.
We haven't had a constitutional convention since then, and the only way to change the Constitution is you have to have 3/5 of the General Assembly has to vote to put an amendment on the ballot, and then the people have to vote for it and approve it in a general election. So it's a pretty difficult process. Now we get into the pros and cons of this amendment.
Right.
The pros are, of course, like the backers say, it means guaranteed funding to keep our transportation infrastructure intact. And that, of course, is one of the state's biggest assets. We're located right in the middle of the country. We have all these railroads coming in. We have highways crisscrossing and busy airports. So that's the pro. But there are cons.
There are cons, and you just you mentioned one of them. You know, it's very difficult to change the Constitution. There are groups, both conservative and more liberal, who have raised strong concerns about this, and the notion that we would set money aside for roads and that the language in the wording of it is vague, and would that mean that money from that fund that has for years gone to other agencies could no longer be used for those purposes? Would we have a situation like we have with pensions where you know, it can never ever be changed? So would that mean we're going to pay for pensions first and roads first and then schools and healthcare
Right.
and prisons and prison guards all kind of get whatever is left over? And at what point does that become a huge problem?
And the, you know, advocates for the developmentally disabled, for
Right.
example. Anybody who's affected by the state's public universities, they're saying, hey, where's our constitutional,
right.
we don't have any guarantee. Why can't we have a guarantee like this? And I think one of the big things that critics have brought up is that this amendment really made it through the General Assembly because it had a good, strong lobbying effort behind it to push it through.
Right, from the road builders and construction and business groups.
And their question is this the way we're going to run state government now? If you can afford to get your message shoved through the General Assembly, then you can get your way. And will everybody's pet project then end up in the state constitution, never to be changed again? Now, proponents say those are wild exaggerations and you don't need to worry about that. And they also say that, hey, any unintended consequences of this thing, they're going to be dealt with
later by the lawmakers.
with legislation. So, but those are your choices. And the whole situation comes about because of our long-standing mismanagement of the budget, which we don't even have a budget now. So that's a whole other issue.
All right. Well, that's enough for today. Thanks for tuning in. If you need more help voting, we have lots of help on our website at rebootillinois.com. We've got side-by-side scorecards in these statewide races that we've talked about today. We have long essay question answers from the candidates for Senate and comptroller. We have links to all of our stories that are election related if you go to the Action tab on the homepage. And we certainly encourage you to go do your civic duty and help create a better Illinois by getting involved, by voting and speaking up.
Still have early voting the weekend before the election, and you will be able to register to vote on Election Day.
All
So
right.
there's not really any reason not to.
No reason not to, and the weather is going to be great according to those weather forecasters. So get out there and do it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next edition of Only in Illinois.